I slashed the spending limit on my credit card down to exactly $10 right as my son and daughter-in-law were sitting down for dinner at an ultra-luxury resort in the Maldives, using the very money they had just stolen from my granddaughter's tuition fund. When security escorted them out of the lobby because they couldn't pay their $21,000 bill, and they had to sleep rough on the airport's concrete floor for 5 days in the suffocating tropical heat, I casually stayed home and called an estate liquidation crew to strip the Newport mansion they lusted after entirely bare. I ripped out the smart lock system and replaced it with heavy, solid brass deadbolts. On the night of a blizzard, when they dragged their suitcases onto my porch, screaming to be let in, I calmly turned on the microphone via the security camera, announced their permanent eviction, and left them exactly $300. The liquidation proceeds from her designer handbags in the mailbox, so they could afford a cheap roadside motel. Hello everyone, and thank you for taking the time to visit the channel. Before I tell you every detail about how I stripped away their entire glamorous facade, exposed their ruthless diary, plotting to poison an old father, and crushed their greed in under 24 hours with lethal legal blows, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching this story from. Please note, this is a fictional story based on real experiences and pain regarding family boundaries, financial abuse, and filial piety, dramatized to deliver a profoundly meaningful lesson. Let's begin. My name is Gordon Mitchell. I am 72 years old, a former executive who spent 45 years of my life working in maritime port logistics on the East Coast of the United States. After my wife, Helen, passed away from a severe illness 7 years ago, I lived alone in a classic, 5-bedroom stone mansion on the coast of Newport, Rhode Island. That was the home Helen and I had pinched every penny from our youth to buy, the place that held all of our family's most peaceful memories. I have one biological son named Brandon, who is 40 years old this year. Brandon is married to Vanessa, a 36-year-old woman who constantly claims to be a lifestyle influencer on social media, even though the actual money she makes from her posts was never enough to afford a single Gucci handbag. In their 10 years of marriage, they had 4 young children together. Being an only child, Brandon was always pampered and sheltered by me. But my unconditional financial support gradually turned my son into a dependent, lazy, and arrogant man. Over the past 7 years, Brandon launched 3 commercial real estate ventures and declared bankruptcy all 3 times. Every time he defaulted on debt, had his cars repossessed by the bank, or was threatened with eviction from his luxury apartment, I was the one who stepped up, writing checks for hundreds of thousands of dollars to clear his debts and save him from legal lawsuits. 3 years ago, when Brandon went bankrupt for the 3rd time and was left completely empty-handed, I couldn't bear to see my 4 grandchildren living in a cramped rental. I made a decision that I would later bitterly regret. I invited Brandon's entire family of 6 to move in with me at the Newport mansion. Before letting them move in, my personal attorney, Mayor Arthur Blackwood, carefully had Brandon and Vanessa sign a legal document called a guest occupancy agreement. This document explicitly stated they were allowed to stay entirely free of charge, with no rent or utility costs, but the homeowner retained full rights to terminate their occupancy status at any time if there was any abuse of property or lack of respect. When they first moved in, Vanessa swore up and down how grateful she was. But only 6 months later, her attitude began to change drastically. She treated living in a $2 million coastal mansion as an obvious entitlement. She took over the entire 2nd floor, renovated the master bedroom into a massive walk-in closet filled with luxury clothes, hired a maid to clean, but forced me to pay all the electric, water, heating, and grocery bills. Brandon became increasingly domineering, constantly gathering his friends to drink premium wine from my cellar, and bragging that he was about to inherit this entire estate. My patience officially hit rock bottom on Thanksgiving of this year. For 2 weeks prior to Thanksgiving, Vanessa kept telling me she was personally preparing the most lavish family dinner to express her gratitude to me. I believed my daughter-in-law. I spent $2,000 buying premium organic groceries according to her requested list, and even declined a dinner invitation from my old friends at the Naval Veterans Club just to stay home and gather with my children and grandchildren. At exactly 5 o'clock in the afternoon on Thanksgiving, I put on a sharp suit and walked down to the main dining room with eager anticipation. But what greeted me was not the flickering light of candles or the aroma of roasted turkey. The entire first floor was plunged in darkness and a chilling silence. The long oak dining table was completely bare. Not a single plate or fork was set out. Bewildered, I walked into the granite kitchen. On the spotless kitchen counter, there was only a pale pink sticky note slapped onto the door of the massive refrigerator. I reached out, peeled the sticky note off, tapped my fingers to adjust my reading glasses, and read Vanessa's familiar purple handwriting. Dad Gordon, my husband, the kids, and I flew out to the Maldives last night to enjoy a luxurious 2-week Thanksgiving vacation. I left you a box of frozen chicken in the fridge. Remember to heat it up well in the microwave before eating so you don't choke and die. Don't call and bother us because international roaming charges are really expensive. Bye. I stood in shock, pulling the refrigerator door open. Inside the empty fridge sat a single cheap, opaque plastic container. I popped the lid off. Inside were a few pieces of dry boiled chicken breast, yellowing from age, alongside a few wilted broccoli florets and a thick layer of congealed white fat clinging to the sides. Taped to the lid was a piece of masking tape with a sarcastic message written in black marker. Leftovers for Gordon. I stood dead still in the middle of the freezing kitchen at 6 o'clock in the evening. A feeling of humiliation, bitter sorrow, and pure rage surged in my chest like an erupting fire. I had raised my son for 40 years, saved him from mountains of debt, opened my arms and let his entire family live in my legal home without taking a dime in rent. Yet on America's most sacred holiday of family gratitude, they abandoned me alone with a box of rotting leftovers and heartless, insulting words. I picked up the frozen chicken box and dropped it straight into the metal trash can under the counter, letting out a sharp thwack. I crumpled the pale pink sticky note in the palm of my hand. At this exact moment, the blind tolerance of a father officially evaporated. I was no longer dealing with a son and daughter-in-law. I was dealing with toxic parasites that needed to be fully eradicated in strict accordance with the law. Without a minute of hesitation, I strode quickly back to my private study at the end of the first-floor hallway. The only room in the mansion I always kept locked with a biometric mechanical deadbolt, explicitly forbidding Vanessa from entering. I booted up my desktop computer, opened the browser, and logged directly into my online financial management system. The first thing that made me suspicious was Brandon's family's 2-week trip to the Maldives. A vacation at the most luxurious private beach resort in the Indian Ocean for 6 people, including long-haul flights and an overwater villa, required a minimum of $30,000 to $40,000. Meanwhile, Brandon had just landed a part-time job at a real estate brokerage, making $30,000 a year, and Vanessa had zero income. Where did they get that kind of massive cash to fly halfway across the globe? I cross-referenced my personal accounting ledgers over the past month and immediately spotted the first anomaly. Exactly 1 week ago, Brandon had walked into my study with a somber face, streaming crocodile tears. He knelt beside my chair, choking back sobs as he told me that his eldest daughter, prestigious private school little 10-year-old Lily, was about to formally expel her because he and his wife couldn't scrape together $5,000 for the winter tuition. Out of love for my own granddaughter, I immediately wrote out a $5,000 cashier's check and handed it to Brandon, instructing him to go straight to the school's bursar's office to pay it. I picked up my desk phone, dialing straight to the vice principal in charge of finance at St. Jude's private school. The polite voice of the vice principal on the other end of the line made my heart clench. "Hello, Mr. Mitchell. We deeply regret to inform you that Lily's tuition account is still showing a balance of $5,000. Brandon did not come in to pay it last week, as you mentioned. In fact, our office had to send a second warning notice to him and his wife yesterday afternoon." I hung up the phone, gritting my teeth hard. My granddaughter's $5,000 tuition had been stolen by her own parents. Checking the matching bank statements, I found the trail. That entire sum of $5,000 had been wired by Brandon straight into Qatar Airways' account to upgrade 6 economy-class tickets to lavish business-class seats for their flight to Maldives. But their ruthless greed didn't stop there. I clicked over to the management page of my premium Chase Sapphire's credit card, my primary credit card with a $100,000 limit. 3 years ago, I had issued an authorized user card for Brandon to hold onto, accompanied by an extremely strict rule. This card was only to be used in the event of an emergency medical crisis, or to buy medicine for the grandchildren when I was away. As the real-time transaction statement loaded on my screen, my eyes were blinded by the charges continuously ringing up in the Maldives over the past 3 days. Transaction on NOV22 $500. Overwater villa deposit payment at 5-star Waldorf Astoria Maldives Ithafushi Resort. Transaction on NOV23 $200. Private sunset yacht charter with Dom Perignon champagne. Transaction on NOV24 $5 $800. High-end pearl jewelry and luxury beachwear shopping bill at the resort's retail boutique. Transaction on the afternoon of NOV26, just a few hours ago, $5,000. Full-body hot stone massage spa therapy and family lobster seafood dinner. The total amount of unauthorized spending on my emergency credit card in just 72 hours had reached a horrifying figure, $18,500. $18,500 US. They had taken their daughter's tuition money to buy business-class flights, then brazenly swiped their elderly father's credit card to pay for an entire royal vacation at one of the most expensive resorts on the planet. They ate Kobe beef, drank $1,000 champagne, lounged in jacuzzis overlooking the open ocean, all while leaving me with an insulting pink sticky note and a box of rotting chicken in a dark house. I leaned back in my leather chair, taking a sip of stone-cold tea. The absolute freezing composure of a former corporate executive began to envelop my mind. I didn't smash furniture. I didn't scream in helplessness. I opened my black leather notebook, picked up my fountain pen, and began drafting every step for Operation Clean Sweep. At exactly 7 o'clock on Thanksgiving night, I picked up the phone and called the Chase Bank's 24/7 VIP customer service hotline. A support specialist named David picked up after the second ring. David, I spoke in a calm, decisive tone. This is Gordon Mitchell, the primary account holder of the Sapphire Reserve card ending in 8842. I need you to execute 2 emergency security protocols on the system immediately. First, flag all transactions totaling $18,500 originating in the Maldives over the past 3 days from the authorized user card under the name Brandon Mitchell as unauthorized fraudulent transactions. I never authorized the use of this card for leisure travel purposes. I have logged the fraud report into your credit profile right now, Mr. Mitchell. David replied professionally. We will permanently lock that authorized user card immediately. Would you like to cancel the primary card as well and issue a replacement? No, I smiled coldly. Do not cancel the primary card yet. I want you to maintain the active status of the authorized user card under Brandon Mitchell's name for exactly the next 12 hours, but access administrative overrides and lower the maximum spending limit on that specific card down to exactly $10. Simultaneously set up an automatic decline order for any payment transaction exceeding $10 at any POS terminal within the Maldives region. David paused for 2 seconds, seemingly instantly understanding the psychological punishment behind my request. An exceptionally sharp decision, Mr. Mitchell. The spending limit on the authorized user card ending in 4109 has been adjusted to exactly $10. Any attempt to swipe the card to pay their hotel bill from this second forward will be rejected by the system with the error code, declined, insufficient funds. I thanked David and hung up. Step 1 was complete. Their financial oxygen in the Maldives had been entirely severed right at the exact moment they were preparing to face their checkout bill. Immediately after, I dialed Mike Henderson, the crew chief of the professional estate liquidation and moving company my maritime firm had partnered with for the past 20 years. Even though it was Thanksgiving night, Mike picked up immediately out of absolute respect for an old friend. Mike, I need your help on an emergency assignment, I said briskly. Tomorrow morning, Black Friday, at exactly 8 a.m., I want you to dispatch 3 large, moving trucks along with your 8 most professional movers to my Newport mansion. We are going to conduct a clean sweep, stripping every piece of furniture bare. I'll have my guys there right on time at 8 a.m. tomorrow, Boss Gordon. Mike replied cheerfully. Leave the whole package to my crew. The next morning, as the winter sun cast brilliant rays onto the frost-covered Newport sidewalks, 3 massive trucks bearing the words Henderson Estate Liquidation, parked neatly in my gravel driveway. Mike and 8 burly movers in work uniforms marched into the mansion under my direction. I led Mike straight up to the second floor, the area Vanessa had presumptuously commandeered for the past 3 years and renovated into her own luxury paradise. Mike, look closely. I pointed at all the bedrooms on the second floor. I am the sole legal owner of this house. Brandon and Vanessa are merely non-paying guests, and they have just severely breached their contract. Now I am ordering you to dismantle, pack up, and strip everything in these rooms bare. The entire king-size bed, the velvet-lined vanity, the wardrobes, and especially that collection of over 30 Louis Vuitton, Chanel, and Gucci handbags, along with hundreds of expensive high heels belonging to Vanessa in that walk-in closet. Where are we packing this up to store it, boss? Mike asked, holding his clipboard. No storage whatsoever, I ordered decisively. Load all that furniture, those beds and cabinets, those clothes and handbags straight onto your trucks and take them to your auction liquidation warehouse. Liquidate it all at rock-bottom prices today. Keep the cash, deduct the labor costs for your men, and bring the net proceeds back to me. As for all their worthless, ratty old personal belongings and junk clothes, throw them all into cardboard boxes and dump them at the public junkyard. For 6 continuous hours, the Newport mansion turned into a frantic dismantling zone. The heavy thud of boots and the rattle of dollies echoed through the hallways. Every luxury Louis Vuitton wardrobe, every Italian imported leather sofa, and Brandon and his wife's $1,000 memory foam mattress were hauled onto the trucks and cleared out completely. The massive master bedroom on the second floor was stripped completely bare, leaving nothing but empty white walls and polished oak floors without a speck of dust. While Mike's crew worked inside, I called a veteran local professional locksmith to handle the entry doors. 2 years ago, Brandon had taken it upon himself to rip out the house's traditional mechanical locks and install a $1,000 smart lock system linked directly to a mobile app and their fingerprints. I pointed at the flashy electronic lock on the main oak door. Tear this smart lock out immediately and throw it in the trash for me, I instructed the locksmith. Replace it on all 3 entry doors of the house with military-grade, solid brass mechanical deadbolts. Change all the keys and give exactly 2 sets solely to me. In just one Black Friday morning, my Newport fortress had been fully reclaimed. The house was swept clean of any trace of Brandon and his wife's lavish parasitism, locked down tight with layers of impenetrable brass and steel from the outside. At exactly noon, the clearing work on the second floor was almost finished. I walked into the master bedroom, which had just been emptied of beds and cabinets, to do a final sweep. Mike was carefully stripping a cream satin bedsheet off the king-size mattress they were about to haul away. As Vanessa's velvet sleeping pillow was lifted, a strange object tumbled out, hitting the oak floor with a heavy thud. It was a thick, luxurious, pale pink leather-bound notebook with gleaming gold-embossed lettering on the cover. My manifestation journal, attracting the universe and architecting the future. I bent down and picked the notebook up. A small leather strap lock attached to the edge was already broken from the habit of constantly opening and closing it. I randomly flipped to the middle of the diary, where Vanessa's swirling purple handwriting covered the pages densely. Initially, I just intended to snap it shut and toss it into the junk pile, but a headline written in bold, solemn capital letters on the page, dated November 23rd, slammed straight into my eyes, making the blood in my body freeze. Operation Freedom Plan, the ultimate recital for Old Man Gordon. I pulled up a small wooden chair and sat right in the middle of the empty bedroom, carefully reading every line, every page of the plan my precious daughter-in-law had painstakingly documented night after night, right under my roof. This notebook wasn't just ordinary emotional journaling. It was a ruthless, spine-chilling criminal blueprint that went far beyond the imagination of any father. On the entry dated October 15th, Vanessa wrote, "Brandon really is a weak, incompetent, and pathetically cowardly man. He's 40 years old and spends all day playing fantasy football and clinging to his fake entrepreneur title. If it weren't for Old Man Gordon's massive accumulated wealth and this $1 million Newport stone mansion, I would have dumped this useless daddy's boy 5 years ago. He's just a tool, a perfect puppet for me to use to manipulate and drain money from the old man." I sighed, a sharp pain in my chest. My son, The man willing to steal his own daughter's tuition money and betray his father to please his wife was nothing but a useless parasitic coward in her eyes. But the following pages truly exposed Vanessa's demonic face. Phase 1. Trick Gordon out of $5. Susan for Lily's tuition to upgrade our flights to the Maldives, and use his Sapphire Reserve emergency credit card to swipe for the entire $20. Susan vacation. Spend as much as possible. When we get back, if the old man finds out, we'll just say it was a bank system error, or force Brandon to cry and apologize, and it'll all be fine. Phase 2. To be executed immediately after Thanksgiving. I cannot stand seeing old man Gordon's face lingering in my living room anymore. I'm going to hire contractors to renovate the damp, moldy underground cellar beneath the mansion. Move all the old man's stuff down into that dark dungeon and install a deadbolt at the top of the stairs to lock him down there. The 5-bedroom mansion above will belong entirely to my husband and our kids. Phase 3, the decisive step: connect with Dr. Evans, that corrupt private doctor who takes bribes to falsify medical records, certifying that Gordon suffers from severe senile dementia. Use those forged records to petition the court to strip his financial autonomy and transfer a comprehensive power of attorney over his assets into Brandon's name. As soon as we have control, immediately sell this Newport mansion for $2 million, drain his retirement accounts, and buy a penthouse in Miami Beach. And most importantly, secret note: if old man Gordon fiercely resists moving down to the basement or refuses to sign the papers, I will secretly double his daily blood pressure medication dosage. Pour extra meds into his morning orange juice so his blood pressure tanks disastrously, causing him to get dizzy, collapse, and be rushed to the hospital. Once he's bedridden in the hospital, tossing him into a crappy nursing home will be as easy as flipping a hand. It's time to be ruthless to architect the future. I closed the diary. The hands that had weathered 40 years of turbulent port storms trembled slightly, not out of fear, but from a rage so cold it pierced my core. They didn't just want to steal my house. They didn't just want to leech my money. This woman had detailed a plan to poison my heart medication, dosing me daily to induce fake strokes so she could throw me in a dungeon and hijack my power of attorney. And my son, even if he didn't write these words himself, undoubtedly cowardly covered up or turned a blind eye to his wife's malice. I stood up, pulled out my phone, and took crystal-clear photos of every single page of the pink notebook. Then, I carefully placed the original diary into a sealed plastic evidence bag and locked it straight into the fireproof steel safe embedded in the wall of my study. This diary was an unappealable legal death sentence for their lives. At that exact time, at the 5-star Waldorf Astoria Maldives Resort, over 14,000 nautical miles away from Newport, local time was 2 p.m. Brandon's family of 6 was standing in front of the luxurious marble reception desk, checking out after 5 days of royal indulgence. Vanessa, wearing a $2,000 Gucci silk maxi dress she had just bought on my card, pearls sparkling around her neck, leaned casually against the reception desk, waiting. Brandon stood beside her, proudly sliding a bill totaling $450, including all additional services racked up in the last 24 hours, along with the authorized Chase Sapphire Reserve card, ending in 4109 toward the native front desk manager, Rajiv. Rajiv smiled politely, taking the premium card and swiping it through the POS terminal. The machine beeped sharply. The terminal screen flashed a blazing red message. Exceed limit, Duck 10. 0 max permitted. I apologize, Mr. Mitchell. Rajiv looked up, raising an eyebrow cautiously. Your credit card has been declined. The banking system returned an error code. The maximum limit permitted on this card is only $10. Tens. Would you be so kind as to provide another method of payment or a different personal credit card? What the hell? Declined? Brandon frowned, tapping the counter. My dad's Sapphire Reserve card has a $100,000 limit. Your island fiber optic network must be glitching. Swipe it again. Rajiv patiently swiped the card a second time, then a third. The result was still the same ruthless red words. Declined. 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 Vanessa's face began to change color. She stepped up, grabbing her husband's arm and whispering through gritted teeth, "Call the bank, or call old man Gordon right now, and see if he's pulling some trick with the account." Brandon frantically pulled out his cell phone, turned on international dialing, and called my cell. In my study in Newport, I saw my phone screen flashing Brandon calling. I calmly hit decline, simultaneously blocking both Brandon's and Vanessa's phone numbers from texting or calling permanently. Unable to reach me, Brandon desperately dialed the Chase support hotline in the U.S. The support agent's voice replied clearly over the speakerphone, so the entire reception desk could hear. "Hello, Mr. Mitchell. We would like to inform you that your authorized user card ending in 4109 has been officially reported by the primary account holder, Amr Gordon Mitchell, as being used for unauthorized fraudulent transactions. The primary account holder has locked the card's limit to $10 and rejected the entire $21.450 bill in the Maldives. Please use your personal funds to settle with the hotel. Goodbye, beep beep beep." The entire resort lobby plunged into a dead silence. Vanessa's complexion instantly shifted from rosy to as pale as a corpse. She stumbled back 2 steps, glaring at her husband, crying and screaming, "Impossible! The old man has gone insane. He locked the card and cut off our money out here on this remote island. Brandon, hurry up and swipe your personal ATM card." Where the hell do I have any money left in my personal account, Vanessa?" Brandon screamed, cold sweat pouring down his forehead like a shower, even though the lobby AC was running ice cold. "I withdrew my last few $100s in savings to buy souvenirs for you. My personal credit cards have been locked due to bad debt since last year's bankruptcy. We don't have a single cent left." Manager Rajiv's attitude instantly flipped 180 degrees. The welcoming smile vanished, replaced by the stern, cold protocol of a high-end resort protecting its assets. Rajiv pressed the button to call security. 4 massive security guards in black uniforms immediately stepped out from the hallway wings, surrounding Brandon's family of 6. "Mr. Mitchell, Mrs. Mitchell." Rajiv's voice was sharp, stripped of any deference. "Since you two are unable to pay your $21,450 bill, according to international legal protocol for this hotel, we must initiate collateral asset seizure." Rajiv pointed at the 4 expensive Louis Vuitton suitcases, the Gucci handbags, and the jewelry Vanessa was wearing. "We will confiscate all 4 premium luggage pieces, designer handbags, and jewelry from both of you as collateral against your hotel debt. Furthermore, we will immediately retain the original international passports of all 6 family members until we can contact the U.S. Embassy in Malé to file a financial violation report. No, you can't take my suitcases and handbags. Those are $1,000 designer items." Vanessa lunged frantically, grappling with a security guard over a Louis Vuitton suitcase, shrieking and crying like a cornered animal. But the massive security guards easily shoved her aside, confiscating every single piece of luggage and their passports. They were stripped of all their assets, left with nothing but the thin clothes on their backs and completely empty wallets. Hotel security escorted the 6 disheveled people onto the resort's garbage transport speedboat, banishing them straight off the private island and dumping them at the public port in the capital city of Malé. No money to rent a hotel in Malé, no money to buy food, and no passports to board regular commercial flights. Brandon's family of 6 was left stranded at the international passenger terminal of Valana Airport in Malé for 5 continuous days and nights. During those 5 days of hell, they had to sleep rough on cold metal airport benches, enduring the suffocating 35 degrees Celsius equatorial heat. The 4 children screamed in hunger and cried from mosquito bites. Brandon was forced to sell his prized Rolex Submariner, watch a graduation gift I had bought him for his master's degree, to an airport hustler for a pitiful $3,000 just to buy dry bread for his kids and pay the penalty fees for emergency travel documents at the embassy. The meager amount of money left after selling the watch was only enough to buy 6 ultra-budget economy class tickets, subjecting them to a horrifying 36-hour travel ordeal, departing Malé, enduring an 8-hour layover in Sri Lanka, waiting another 6 hours in Doha, Qatar, then cramming into a cramped cabin for 14 hours back to New York, before dragging themselves onto a taxi for a 4-hour drive back to Newport. On the Friday night after Thanksgiving, at 10:15 p.m., a blinding blizzard with temperatures plunging below -10 degrees Celsius was sweeping across Newport Avenue. I sat in the dark living room, sipping a glass of red wine, my eyes locked onto the 4K surveillance monitor feeding from the front gate. A yellow taxi van, caked in mud and snow, pulled sluggishly into my gravel driveway. Brandon stepped out of the vehicle first. He looked pathetic, as battered as a drowned ghost washing ashore. His silk beachwear was wrinkled and stained, his body shivering violently under a thin blazer without a winter coat. Vanessa trudged behind him, carrying a toddler, her feet still wearing thin strapped sandals, stepping directly onto the slippery ice and snow. The three older children huddled timidly behind them, their faces gray with exhaustion. Brandon hurriedly pulled out his last wad of crumpled cash and shoved it into the taxi driver's hand. The van immediately screeched its tires, turning around and fleeing, leaving 6 people standing alone in front of the dark mansion. Brandon dragged his suitcase, rushing across the gravel up onto the porch. He extended his thumb, pressing it against where the lock should be to scan his fingerprint. But his finger smacked harshly against freezing solid brass. He looked down in bewilderment. The smart lock was completely gone. In its place was a heavy-duty, solid brass mechanical deadbolt. He frantically twisted the doorknob, then used his shoulder to ram violently against the steel-reinforced oak doors. The doors remained as immovable as a fortress wall. What the hell is going on? Vanessa screamed from the steps below, her teeth chattering uncontrollably. Open the door right now, Brandon. The locks are changed. The old man changed all the locks. Brandon yelled in panic. He ran quickly to the side hallway, pressing numbers on the garage keypad, but I had cut the power to the electronic circuit board 3 days ago. He ran back to the porch, pressing his face against the crack in the living room window blinds, slamming both hands against the glass, wailing pitifully. Dad! Dad, open the door for us. We're freezing to death out here, Dad. I set my wine glass down on the table, opened the Ring camera management app on my laptop, and turned on the microphone. My deep, freezing, flat voice rang out crystal clear through the doorbell speaker on the porch, drowning out even the howling blizzard. Good evening, Brandon. I hope you enjoyed your late Thanksgiving vacation in the Maldives. Brandon jumped, looking up at the camera lens, pressing his hands together and pleading. Dad, you can hear me. Please unlock the door, Dad. It's -10 degrees out here. The kids are all sick with fevers. Why did you lock the door and ban me from the house? House? I spoke slowly through the speaker, every word as sharp as a razor. Which house are you referring to, Brandon? This house is the exclusive property of the Gordon Mitchell Revocable Trust, of which I am the sole trustee. According to Clause 4.2 of the Guest Occupancy Agreement you and Vanessa voluntarily signed 3 years ago, you two are merely rent-free guests. And according to Clause 4.3, any abuse of property and financial theft automatically terminates your occupancy rights immediately, turning your status into illegal trespassers. Theft? Vanessa shoved her way in front of the camera, crying crocodile tears and screaming. We just borrowed the credit card for a little spending. You're the father-in-law. You have a duty to provide for your children and grandchildren. You changing the locks and barring legal tenants from entering is a criminal offense. I'm calling the police to have you handcuffed right now. Call them, Vanessa, I replied calmly. I am extremely looking forward to displaying for the police the $500 stolen credit card statements, the evidence of your $5,000 to $1,000 fraud, stealing Lily's tuition money. And most importantly, the high-definition photos of your entire pale pink manifestation journal, where you detailed your plot to renovate the basement to imprison me, and your plan to double my daily blood pressure medication to poison me so you could steal my power of attorney. The word diary crashed onto the porch like a sledgehammer. Brandon froze stiff, turning to look at his wife with eyes filled with absolute shock. Vanessa shrank back, clamping both hands over her mouth, her eyes rolling white in sheer terror as she realized her most ruthless murder plot was completely in my hands. I strongly advise you to find shelter before a patrol car drives by and sweeps you up for disturbing the peace, I continued through the speaker. Open the lid of the metal mailbox attached to the post on the edge of the porch. Inside there is a white envelope. That is a wad of $300, $300 in cash, obtained from liquidating your pile of Louis Vuitton and Gucci handbags you left on the second floor. Vanessa, that amount is exactly enough to rent 2 nights at the cheap Motel 6 located 5 miles down the highway. Take that final handout and get out of my sight immediately. Brandon opened the mailbox, pulled out the envelope, and stared at the $20 bills inside. He looked up at the camera, his face contorted in ultimate humiliation and hatred, growling, "I hate you." Just 10 minutes later, the flashing blue and red lights of a Newport police cruiser pierced through the curtain of falling snow, pulling right up to the driveway. An officer stepped out, shining his flashlight straight onto the porch. "Is anyone there? We received a distress call reporting an illegal eviction here." Sergeant Miller shouted through the howling wind. Vanessa charged off the porch like an arrow, ignoring the freezing snow, lunging at the officer to grab his arm and scream, "Officer, it's my father-in-law. He's suffering from severe senile dementia and delusions. He hired locksmiths to change the locks and threw our entire legal family of 6 out onto the street in the middle of a blizzard. He even sold off all my designer furniture and clothes worth tens of thousands of dollars. Please arrest him and force him to open the door and hand over the keys right now." Sergeant Miller motioned for them to keep quiet, stepped up to the porch, and politely rang the doorbell. I leisurely opened the double oak doors, inviting Sergeant Miller and the couple to step over the threshold into the main hall, where the living room was completely empty, leaving nothing but the polished oak floor. "Good evening, Mr. Mitchell." Sergeant Miller spoke, tipping his hat. "I received a report accusing you of illegally locking out legal tenants and showing signs of memory loss. Can you explain this?" I calmly opened a thick black folder labeled Residency and Assets Status File laid out on the granite kitchen counter for Sergeant Miller to inspect. "Sergeant, first of all, this is the certified copy of the deed to the mansion, exclusively owned by my personal trust. Brandon and Vanessa hold absolutely 0% of ownership. Second, this is the free guest occupancy agreement they signed and fingerprinted 3 years ago. Please read Clause 4.3. Any abuse of property or financial theft instantly revokes their guest status, turning them into illegal trespassers." I flipped to the bank statement stamped for verification. "Here is the evidence of the $5,000 theft of my granddaughter's private school tuition to buy business-class flights, along with the $18,500 unauthorized spending bill on my emergency credit card at the Maldives beach over the past week. And finally, I pulled out the high-definition photos of the pale pink diary's cover and contents. And this is the reason I had to change the locks and call the liquidation company. Please read this handwritten paragraph excerpted from Vanessa Mitchell's personal diary found under her pillow. They plotted to renovate the basement to imprison me and conspired to double my daily blood pressure medication, to cause a dizzy spell and fall, sending me to the hospital, thereby forging a dementia diagnosis to hijack my power of attorney. I am not senile or delusional. I am a father who luckily discovered the poisoning murder plot of his own son and daughter-in-law before they could strike." Sergeant Miller carefully read every page of the documents and the diary photos. His sun-tanned face shifted into a look of absolute outrage and disgust. He spun around, walking heavily toward Brandon and his wife cowering near the hallway steps, resting his hand on the steel handcuffs on his belt and hissing sharply, "Mr. Mitchell, Mrs. Mitchell, I have just reviewed all the evidence. This is absolutely not a civil tenant dispute. You two are merely contract guests whose legal residency has been terminated. The evidence of the $18,000 credit card theft and the diary entry detailing a plot to alter an elderly person's heart medication dosage constitute extremely serious criminal offenses. Currently, Mr. Gordon is not requesting an emergency arrest, but I am giving you a formal warning right here on camera. If you two dare to set a single foot on this gravel driveway or engage in any further harassing doorbell ringing, I will immediately handcuff you, take you to Newport Police Headquarters, and press criminal charges for criminal trespass and grand larceny." Vanessa turned pale, terrified, stumbling back 3 steps at the threat of state prison. She yanked her husband's shirt, hissing in panic, "Go. Let's get out of here right now, Brandon. He really wants to throw us in jail." Brandon kept his face buried towards the wooden floor, not daring to look at me once, dragging his wife and kids straight into the taxi, which sped off into the street. Sergeant Miller shook my hand firmly, congratulated my incredibly sharp and shrewd legal preparation, and drove his patrol car away. At 2 o'clock the next afternoon, amidst the second howling blizzard hitting the city of Providence, the capital of Rhode Island, lawyer Arthur Blackwood and I were sitting at a massive 6-meter oak conference table on the 15th floor of the Blackwood and Associates high-rise. Lawyer Blackwood was a legal titan who charged an $800 an hour consulting fee. He possessed a mind sharp as a scalpel and a ruthless professional philosophy. Zero mercy when you hold absolute proof. Brandon and Vanessa pushed the conference room doors open and walked in. They looked haggard and disheveled after a miserable night at Motel 6, their coats smelling of the cold, damp blizzard air. As soon as Vanessa sat down, she glared at me and arrogantly threatened, "Well, you finally agreed to sit down and negotiate, didn't you? Let me tell you this. The police might have let you off this morning, thanks to those ancient contract papers, but the civil court system won't be fooled so easily. We've already consulted a lawyer. We will sue you for $2 million. Dong zero, in damages for illegal eviction, emotional abuse, theft of furniture, and endangering 4 children. Additionally, we will petition the court for an emergency medical guardianship order to commit you to a psychiatric ward for evaluation, stripping your right to manage your own assets due to your delusional dementia." Brandon slammed his hand on the oak table, growling, "Dad, you better sign the mansion's deed back over and restore our credit card limits this afternoon. Otherwise, come Monday, the $2 million lawsuit will be on a judge's desk." Lawyer Blackwood didn't even bother looking up at them for a second. He took off his gold-rimmed glasses, wiped them gently with a silk cloth, then slowly slid a massive, thick blue hardcover binder across the table, straight in front of Brandon. "Good afternoon, Mr. Brandon, Mrs. Vanessa." Blackwood's voice was smooth but cold as an iceberg. "Before you sing your song about a $2 million lawsuit or some delusional psychiatric guardianship, I advise you both to take 5 minutes to read through the emergency forensic audit report my 3 accounting experts finalized this morning regarding the Mitchell Family Mansion Maintenance Fund. 5 years ago, I had set aside $200,000, $200, to establish an independent maintenance fund, putting Brandon's name as a co-manager, with the sole purpose of paying periodic property taxes and covering roof and garden repairs for the Newport mansion during my senior years. The initial balance of the fund was $200,000. Blackwood flipped to the cash flow summary page. As of 8 o'clock this morning, the remaining balance in that bank account is exactly $412. $412.18. You drained every last cent of that $200,000 during your 3 years living under your father's roof. To use that money for actual house repairs and maintenance." Brandon stammered in defense, cold sweat breaking out on his forehead despite the AC running steadily. A 5-bedroom mansion has massive upkeep costs. Plumbing repairs, landscaping. "Do not lie to my face, Mr. Mitchell." Blackwood slammed his hand on the table with a crack that made Vanessa jump. He pulled out a stack of bank-verified invoices and tossed them onto the table. "Here is a $12 zone withdrawal marked slate roof repair," but the auditor traced the beneficiary bank ID. The money was wired straight to a Providence Mercedes-Benz dealership for a long-term lease down payment on a BMW X5 for your wife to cruise around in. Next, an $8,500 withdrawal marked heating boiler replacement. The money went straight to the luxury jewelry store Van Cleef & Arpels in New York to buy a 4-leaf clover diamond necklace, exactly the necklace Mrs. Vanessa is wearing around her neck right at this moment. And a slew of other forged invoices. A $5,000 withdrawal marked oak tree trimming went to buying Delta Airlines business class tickets. A $4,000 withdrawal marked underground pipe replacement went to beauty therapy sessions at a luxury salon in Boston. Blackwood leaned back in his chair, looking dead into 2 faces that were now as white as ash. "Mr. Brandon, falsifying documents and embezzling assets from a family trust constitutes the crime of embezzlement under the Rhode Island Criminal Code and wire fraud under federal law. The total embezzled amount is $200,000, a sum sufficient to put you in a maximum security prison for 10 to 15 years. I am giving you exactly two options. Option A, walk out of this conference room right now. At exactly noon today, I will submit this entire audit report, along with the evidence of the $18,500 credit card theft, to the FBI and the state prosecutor. The police will be at Motel 6 to handcuff you both before dinner. Brandon goes to prison for 15 years. Vanessa is indicted as an accomplice. And most importantly, when both parents go to prison, Rhode Island Child Protective Services will immediately strip you of custody of your 4 children, placing them in foster care scattered across the state. Option B. Pick up a pen and sign right here at this table, on the comprehensive legal settlement agreement drafted by me. Vanessa trembled, choking back sobs as she asked for the settlement terms. Blackwood tapped his finger on the red folder, clearly reciting each ruthless, definitive clause. First, sign a full declaration of guilt, confirming the entire embezzlement of $200,000 from the maintenance fund, and the theft of $18,500 on the reserve card. Second, sign a waiver permanently forfeiting all rights, claims, or demands regarding residency, tenancy, or ownership of the Newport mansion and any assets belonging to Mr. Gordon Mitchell. Third, Brandon is officially stripped of his status as an heir under the current and any future will. You will not receive a single cent when your father passes away. Fourth, sign and accept an absolute no-contact order, strictly forbidding you from ever contacting or approaching within 500 feet of Mr. Gordon. And finally, accept the establishment of an emergency asset restitution plan. The court will automatically garnish 25% of the total pre-tax monthly income from all jobs and wages of both Brandon and Vanessa for the next 20 years to repay every penny of the $218,500 loss. There was no retreat, no loophole to exploit against the impenetrable legal wall built by the old fox of a lawyer. In sheer terror at the prospect of prison and losing his children to CPS, Brandon sobbed as he took the Montblanc fountain pen with a trembling hand and signed the name Brandon Mitchell under option B. Biting her lip until it bled in ultimate humiliation, Vanessa also snatched the pen and hastily signed the name Vanessa Mitchell right next to it. Just as Brandon and his wife thought everything was over after signing the agreement and were preparing to stand up and leave, Lawyer Blackwood abruptly raised his hand to stop them. Hold on. Sit back down in your chairs. We're not finished yet. Blackwood grabbed a remote control and pressed a button. Automated aluminum blinds rolled down, covering all the conference room windows and plunging the space into darkness. The high-definition 4K projector on the ceiling powered up, casting a brilliant white beam onto the 10-meter-wide wall at the end of the room. Mr. Brandon, Blackwood spoke with authority, I have noticed that you always have a tendency to blindly cover for and trust your wife's instigations, believing that her insults and extortion against your father are just moments of stressful homemaking pressure. To ensure the absolute future safety of my client, I have a legal obligation to display to you the complete truth about the partner you were willing to rob your biological father to pamper. The giant projector screen immediately displayed a high-resolution image of the pastel pink Manifestation Journal's cover. Vanessa jolted, clasping her hands and wailing desperately, "No! Please, Mr. Blackwood, don't show that. That's my private diary." Blackwood ignored her, calmly pressing the next button. The screen displayed the October 15th entry in Vanessa's purple ink, magnified 10 times to be crystal clear. Brandon really is a weak, incompetent, and pathetically cowardly man. He's 40 years old and spends all day playing fantasy football and clinging to his fake entrepreneur title. If it weren't for Gordon's massive accumulated wealth and the $1 million Newport mansion, I would have dumped this useless daddy's boy 5 years ago. He's just a tool, a perfect puppet for me to use to manipulate and drain money from the old man. Brandon sat stiffly in his chair, his eyes wide open to the point of tearing as he stared in agony at the words that despised and humiliated him as a useless coward, a parasitic puppet of the very wife he had catered to with all his heart. Blackwood clicked to the next slide, the Operation Freedom Plan from November 23rd. Renovate the damp, moldy basement into a dungeon. Move old man Gordon's stuff down there and lock him in. Connect with Dr. Evans to forge a dementia certificate, steal his power of attorney, sell the mansion, buy a Miami penthouse. If old man Gordon resists, I will secretly double his daily blood pressure medication dosage so he faints. His blood pressure tanks, he goes to the hospital, and we toss him in a nursing home. The entire conference room was so quiet you could hear the projector's cooling fan. Brandon slowly turned his head to look straight into Vanessa's face. His expression was no longer cowardly or panicked. It was the absolute horrifying shock of a man who just realized he had been sleeping in the same bed with a cold-blooded monster for 10 years. "Vanessa," Brandon rasped, crushing every word. Were you really going to poison my dad's heart medication?" You planned to slowly murder him to steal his money for a house. While you despised me and called me a useless coward. No, Brandon, listen to me explain. I was just really depressed and stressed out at the time. I wouldn't actually dare do it. Vanessa sobbed, trying to deny her guilt. Shut your mouth! Brandon suddenly exploded, surging up and knocking his chair crashing backward onto the floor. He pointed a trembling finger straight in his wife's face, his eyes streaming with furious tears. You are a vile, poisonous snake. I betrayed my biological father, turned myself into the most ungrateful, treacherous son in the world just to buy your smile. And yet you planned to poison my father. You planned to lock him in a basement like an old dog. Humiliated by her husband in front of outsiders, Vanessa's vicious, toxic true nature exploded in return. She stood up, pointing right at Brandon's nose, screaming until her throat burned. Yeah, so what? I wrote that. You think I craved marrying a 40-year-old man with 3 bankruptcies and 0 career? If it weren't for the old man's assets, you'd be a beggar at the bottom of society. I wasted 10 years of my youth on this pathetic family, and now you just signed a $200,000 debt shackling me for the next 20 years. I despise you. I despise your entire bloodline. The husband and wife launched into a screaming match, tearing away their last shred of dignity, blaming each other for every failure and every stolen dollar right there at the luxury conference table. Finally, Brandon stopped yelling, his chest heaving as he gasped for air. He pulled the yellow gold wedding band off his ring finger and slammed it hard onto the oak table, where it bounced with a sharp clink. We are done here, Vanessa, Brandon said, every word ice cold. This afternoon I am going straight to a divorce lawyer's office to file for divorce on the grounds of fraud and attempted murder. I am taking custody of the kids. Get out of my life forever. He turned his back, taking heavy steps straight toward the conference room door without looking back. The door closed, leaving Vanessa with her head buried on the table, sobbing uncontrollably in utter humiliation and absolute defeat under the pink diary pages written by her own hand. I left the conference room and took the elevator down to the main lobby on the first floor of the Blackwood building. Just as expected, Brandon was sitting with his head bowed on a leather bench against the marble wall, near the revolving doors, looking out at the blizzard. Hearing my footsteps, he slowly looked up, his eyes flashing with a faint glimmer of hope that after seeing him decide to divorce his evil wife, my heart would soften, and I would open my arms to forgive and welcome him home. He pushed off the bench with both hands, stepping quickly toward me, his voice choking. Dad, I understand everything now, Dad. I'm an idiot who was blinded by that evil woman. But I've thrown her away, Dad. Now it's just you and me. Can you forgive me, Dad? I stopped exactly 3 paces away from him, looking straight into his face without a single ounce of emotion. I didn't open my arms. Instead, I lifted the blue folder and pulled out a document printed on thick, premium paper bearing the seal of a Rhode Island notary public, holding it right in front of his eyes. Promissory note and asset security agreement. The bolded loan value printed below. $450, 450,000 US dollars. Signed exactly 5 years ago between the borrower Brandon Mitchell and the lender, Gordon Mitchell. The $450,000 promissory note? Brandon stammered, shock washing over him again. Dad, this is the money you lent me as business capital 5 years ago to start the real estate company. I went bankrupt on the project, and you told me business risks are normal, and you wouldn't ask for it back. Yes, at the time I didn't collect the debt, because I believed your sworn words that you lost it all buying land. I looked into his eyes sharply. But Blackwood's auditors just traced the cash flow of that loan this morning. You blatantly lied to me 5 years ago. Immediately after the disbursement, you committed an act of piercing the corporate veil. You didn't buy a single plot of land. Instead, you withdrew $50,000 to buy 2 Mercedes G-Wagons for you and your wife, spent $30, sows on a membership to the elite Soho House Club in New York, blew $20,000 shopping for Hermes in Paris, and siphoned the remaining $300 plus into your personal account to sustain a lavish, partying lifestyle for 2 years before declaring a fraudulent bankruptcy. Brandon's face turned white as chalk. He staggered, nearly falling on the marble floor, as his most despicable financial secret was dug up and exposed. And please look closely at Clause 8.1 regarding the repayment term. I tapped my finger on the contract. This $450,000 loan had a fixed term of exactly 5 years. The maturity date to repay all principal and interest is clearly stated as November 30th, which was yesterday. Yesterday has passed, and you haven't paid a single cent. As the legal lender, I am officially declaring the activation of the immediate default collection clause. Dad, what are you doing? Brandon dropped to both knees on the marble floor, crying and begging as office workers walked by and watched. You just forced me to sign a $200,000 debt for the maintenance fund on the 15th floor. Now you're dropping this $450,000 debt on me too. That's over $650,000 total. Where am I going to get that kind of money? I've lost my house, lost my car, lost my wife. I have nothing left but my 2 empty hands, Dad. Lawyer Blackwood filed a petition for a default judgment with the Rhode Island Supreme Court at exactly 1:30 p.m. today. I calmly bent down, looking at him with absolute finality. You and your wife, Vanessa, whether you get divorced or not, will jointly bear the burden of this financial judgment. The court will apply an automatic garnishment order of 25% of your total monthly income from all sources of salary, salaried work, or manual labor for both of you over the next 30 years until the $650 ZU principal and interest is wiped clean. You will never be able to work as a real estate broker again with a fraud record. You will have to go out there and find manual warehouse lifting jobs or night delivery shifts to earn every drop of blood, sweat, and tear money to pay off your debt to me. Brandon looked up at me miserably, tears streaming. Dad, how can you ruthlessly crush your own biological son's entire life like this? Do you have no fatherly love left for me at all? I straightened up, adjusted the lapels of my coat, and looked down at him for the last time. My name is Gordon Mitchell. I spoke with ironclad resolve, every word clear and solemn as an eternal sentence. You lost all rights to call me Dad, the moment you and your wife treated me like a lifeless safe with a heartbeat, the moment you signed off on renovating a moldy basement to imprison your old father and conspired to up my blood pressure meds to kill me. I turned on my heel and took long, steady strides across the marble floor, straight toward the revolving glass doors of the building, leaving Brandon's pitiful wailing behind, without turning my head back even a millimeter. I stepped out onto Providence Avenue, engulfed in storm winds and a blinding curtain of snow. The freezing winter air rushed into my lungs, but it had never felt so crisp, so clean, and so free. 2 days later, the transfer of the 5-bedroom Newport mansion was officially completed, sold outright in cash for $1.8 million, $800,000, to a young doctor and architect couple moving in from Boston. I stood at the VIP teller counter of a Providence bank, signing a wire transfer order to donate that entire $1.8 million straight to the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, investing in brave soldiers who truly know the meaning of responsibility and self-respect, rather than fattening up ungrateful parasites. After the lawsuit went public, Vanessa was exposed by the online community, and brands canceled her sponsorship deals. Stripped of all her assets, she packed up her 4 children and trudged back to her hometown in New Jersey, begging to stay in her parents' basement amidst the humiliating disgrace of her family. As for Brandon, his broker's license was permanently revoked by the State Department of Financial Regulation. To survive and meet the 25% monthly income garnishment order imposed by the court, he was forced to apply for a job as a cargo loader for a frozen food distribution supermarket in the Providence suburbs. One morning before leaving the U.S., I stopped at a red light at a suburban intersection and saw through my car window the figure of Brandon, wearing a neon safety vest, hauling heavy crates of frozen vegetables and fruits on his shoulders from a truck into a warehouse. His face was etched with exhausted wrinkles, sweat pouring down his cheeks in the freezing weather. His hands blistered. He was doing the exact same blood, sweat, and tears cargo loading job I had started out doing in my 20s at Pier 42. I calmly pressed the gas pedal and drove through the intersection when the light turned green with absolute serenity. Finally, at age 40, Brandon Mitchell had begun to learn the gravity of money and the value of honest labor. 3 weeks later, I flew to Europe and found my way to the sun-drenched countryside of Tuscany in central Italy, signing a long-term lease on a classic stone villa nestled amid vineyards. and enrolling in a traditional Chianti Classico winemaking masterclass with the seasoned artisan Marco. Every morning I wake up at 6 to watch the golden sun shine over the rolling green hills, breathe in the scent of terracotta earth, and learn how to prune vines and control the humidity for each oak barrel. Yesterday afternoon, as I was drinking tea on the villa porch watching the Tuscan sunset, the local postman drove up on his Vespa and handed me an airmail postcard from the U.S. On the back of the postcard was Brandon's familiar, tidy handwriting. Dear Dad, I finished my third pay period loading cargo at the frozen warehouse. The court automatically garnished 25% of my salary, and I voluntarily set aside extra to send the first $500 repayment installment to your debt recovery account. I know that number is minuscule compared to what I've done, but it's the first money in my life I've earned with my own real sweat. Loading frozen cargo is extremely grueling and makes my body ache, but I want you to know, every night when I get back to my small rented room, I lie down on the bed and fall into a deep, peaceful sleep, no longer tormented by lies or vain delusions. I am very tired, but I sleep much better, Dad. I don't dare ask for your forgiveness right now. I just want to say I am 1,000 times sorry for all the terrible things, and I thank you for the harsh but priceless lesson you taught me about independence and self-respect. I promise I will pay off this entire debt, no matter how many years it takes. I wish you health and peace in Italy. Your son Brandon. I read the postcard twice, a warm, gentle smile flickering at the corners of my lips. I didn't tear it up or throw it in the trash, like Vanessa's insulting pink sticky notes. Instead, I carefully placed the postcard in the top drawer of the heavy oak desk, right next to my and Helen's old wedding photo album. I stood up, walked slowly out onto the sun-drenched porch, and raised a crystal glass filled with bright ruby red wine fermented from the very Tuscan grapes I had helped cultivate up into the breathtaking evening sunlight, toasting to a new, peaceful chapter of my life. For 40 years, I firmly believed in a deeply flawed false prejudice, that family love equated to absolute, unconditional sacrifice, and that a truly great father was supposed to act as an indestructible safety net for every single one of his children's catastrophic falls, regardless of whether they were right or wrong. But the bitter, harsh experiences of the past year have taught me a much deeper, far more painful truth. Limitless, boundaryless indulgence is not love. It is a sweet, silent poison that systematically destroys a child's character, ambition, and ability to be an independent adult in this world. When you continuously allow others, even your own precious flesh and blood, to trample relentlessly on your self-respect and treat you like nothing more than a convenient financial tool, you not only lose your own identity, but you actively participate in turning them into ruthless, entitled parasitic monsters who will eventually stop at nothing to bleed you dry. It is absolutely never too late to establish firm boundaries. It is never too late to stand up tall, look them in the eye, and fiercely protect your hard-earned dignity, your lifelong assets, and your own unshakable self-respect. If you are currently facing devastating ingratitude or silent financial abuse within your own family, I urge you to be brave enough to finally turn the heavy brass deadbolt on your life and lock out the toxicity. Remember this one undeniable fact: true, enduring peace only comes when you summon the courage to tear out the toxic, suffocating weeds by their roots, making enough room for true, beautiful living values to sprout and thrive under the sun. Thank you all so much for following my entire journey and story today. If this difficult lesson has given you any meaningful reflections on the importance of family boundaries, personal dignity, and self-respect, please do not hesitate to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this story far and wide with anyone who might desperately need a boost of strength right now. Please leave a comment down below, letting me know exactly what you think of my handling of the situation, and honestly tell me, what would you do if you're standing in my shoes on that freezing blizzard night? I look forward to reading your thoughts. Goodbye for now, take care of yourselves, and I will see you soon in the next stories.